Creation is the universe. Creation is everything that we can see and probably a whole lot that we can't, probably more that we can't see. But it's what's about us, and it's the relationship, this amazing web of life that we have here. And nature, which is part of creation, is more like the earth itself in its part, in its position in this whole web of life in the creation. We have relationships with all the elements and forces of life, including the sun, we call our elder brother; the moon, we call our grandmother; the winds, we call our grandfathers; the four directions, our grandfathers; and then all of the elements of life itself. So, in this idea of creation, nature is the earth itself, and we call the earth Mother. Itinoha, our mother. As we call all women Itinoha, mothers. And from mothers spring life, and we understand that. And we know that life springs from the earth, that generations that are looking up layer upon layer, waiting their time to come up and serve and be, is our responsibility. So the earth is female. If you have a mother, then you have children. So we're children. We're children of the earth. And we're tied to the earth. We come from the earth and we go back to the earth, and the earth has great systems of regeneration, great cycles of regenerative life. And it's these cycles that we're all part of. And just as the earth has seasons of life, all animals and all things that grow and fly, and including humans, have seasons of life as well. And so we grow in the same style. What's different about all of that is the time that's allocated to the varieties of life that are on the earth. And we have a fairly long system of life, but not the longest. Turtles live beyond us. Parrots live beyond us. There are certain mammals that have an older life cycle than we do, but we have a long life cycle as it is on Earth. And then also, when you move down to the fine insects, then their life cycle is counted in days. So what you have is this variety and complexity of life, and the times that are allocated, and what happens during those times for each of these elements. That's what's important to understand. What I've noticed and know about indigenous people around the earth is that many, many indigenous nations have been able to hang on to the knowledges that they have, the traditional knowledge, fortunately, I think, for everybody. And in this traditional knowledge is the directions or the instructions for a good life. So we have instructions about how do we conduct ourselves on this earth, and probably the first one is respect. And I think if there was a law, common law around the world, indigenous peoples, and I think everybody, respect is a law. And if people followed this law, simple law of respect, you'd have a lot more peace, and you'd have a lot more quiet and a better life. So I'd say respect conduct yourself accordingly and recognize what your obligations are and what your duties are. And the duties are to protect these life forms. When the peacemaker came to our territory about 1,000 years ago and brought this whole concept of peace as the original 5 nations, the Mohawks, the Oneidas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, Senecas, were in a constant warfare. And we had really forgotten our instructions that we had prior to that, and we're not living by them. And the peacemaker came among us and brought this whole idea, concept of peace and democracy. And he gave it to us whole. And it took him a long time to do that. There's a whole story about how he came and how he worked with Hyan Wenta, whom you call Hiawatha, and how they worked and brought together this great confederacy called the Haudenosaunee, based on peace, based on equity, justice for people, and based on the power of the good minds, the power of unity, the issues of health, all given to us 1,000 years ago. And he laid out the process by which we do this. And one of the first things he said was he was going to give great responsibility to the women. Since the earth is female, then the women should be working with the earth. Men would be in charge of fire. Women would be in charge of water. And so the men are work to see to the welfare. We do counseling, we do meetings, we do all of that. And if needs be, we fight. But basically we're dedicated to peace. And that was what's so important about that time, 1,000 years ago. When if you looked in Europe at that time, as great wars were going on, and the whole history of Europe, as I saw it, is one war after the other, century after century, how people lived in constant fear, and thousands of people died. Well, in this part of the universe, which was kind of just isolated, the Western Hemisphere wasn't even known about, we were operating under a different system. And it was basically one of respect and councils of leaders to try to keep the peace, because human nature is human nature. And you have to have a process by which to meet problems. And you have to have rules and so forth. So the rules was always based around respect. And fundamental to all of that was the understanding of how the earth itself was paramount to all of our life. And so in this idea of respect was also the understanding of what we should do and how we should conduct ourselves according to the elements of the earth and all of the natural worlds. So we always said that we have been told and understand that we're relatives. And where our white brother will talk about water and trees and animals and fish as resources, we talk about them as relatives. And that's a whole different perspective. If you think that they're relatives and you understand it and you understand that, then you're going to treat them differently. And the responsibility the peacemaker said to us was very clear. He planted a great tree of peace, a great white pine, a great symbol to our nations. He said, this is the great tree of peace. He said, its roots will be 4 white roots of truth that reach in the 4 directions of the earth. And those that have nowhere to go can follow the root back to its source and come under the protection of the great tree. And he said that this tree of peace is a spiritual law and represents a spiritual law. And the spiritual law is the law of nature. And he told us explicitly, never challenge this law, because you cannot prevail. You will not prevail.
And so the basic concept again of the fundamental of the earth, the very earth that you stand on. Now you're close to it here, you can see. You're among the trees, you're among the grass. It's your family. It's your mother. And that's the way we look at it. And from the earth springs all life. You cannot sustain yourself independent. You cannot. So, involved in this first message that we have of how you live is the concepts of law. And what are the laws? They are simply what we use a general term of the natural law, the law that will prevail, the law that has no tribunal on this earth. You have no access except to agree with it. If you disagree with this law, you suffer. You don't have a choice. And so people say, well, what is the natural law? I'm speaking in very basic terms to you. It's as if I was speaking to some little children at this point, because I don't know how much you understand of what we're thinking about. And so, like all of our people, we like to begin at the beginning so that we can follow. And we do this. So we're always taking a lot of time. We always take a lot of time because we go through these steps one at a time. And you may know all this very well. But I'm saying so just in case someone there doesn't. Or at least maybe the first time you heard it. So what is the natural law? Well, the natural law is what we are all bound by, what makes us a family, which is life, and what we need for life. And so just as the trees need rain to grow, you need water to live. So we'll take that basic element of water. Now, you may or may not be aware of the power of water as life. And if you're not, I would suggest just to try, for your own experience, not to drink water for several days. You will immediately become aware of the natural law. And this natural law will make itself felt to you more with each minute. And if you continue to ignore the natural law, you're going to die. And there is no court, there is no judge, there is no university that can save you, because now you're dealing with the natural law. You see? That's the natural law. Now what else don't you know about the natural law? And how much more is involved? And how have you insulated yourself, and how has society insulated itself against the natural law? Those are things to think about. And you can take your time and think about it. I'm just making the point of what the natural law is, what we deal with. So obviously, if you're going to be a government, and if you're going to be a people, and you're going to be a community, if you do not coincide and agree with the natural law, you're bound for an awful lot of heartache and hurt, because it has no mercy. Nature has no mercy whatsoever. You want to understand that. You want to understand the reality. There is no mercy. There is nothing to talk to, nothing to ask. Once you have violated, once you have transgressed, you will pay.
The 100 dominant economic units in the world today, 49 are countries and 51 are corporations. Now, you digest that for a second. What does that mean? It means that corporations are the driving force of decision making today. And corporations are not concerned with human rights. They're not concerned with human life. They're not even concerned with a proper wage for the people that are working for them. So what kind of decisions are going to be made on our behalf by this economic power, these corporate states, I call them? Oh, there's going to be hell to pay, as they say, for some of the things that are going on now. So I think that people have to become aware and become awake, and power is always in the people's hands. Authority, they need to come of one mind, and they need to challenge the values that are being shoved at them today, because this has become a consumer society. It's driven by economics. It's not driven by common sense. I don't think, as in the United States, they have a Bill of Rights, that they added on to the Constitution of the United States. And I think that should have been a Bill of Responsibility, not a Bill of Rights. Because people talk about their rights, but they never talk about their responsibility.
We were told that all life is equal. And when you say all life, you mean literally all forms of life. They're all equal. And the rationale behind that is quite simple, because we believe in a creation. We believe in what we call Sangwai Disae, giver of life. And in his process, he made all things. And since they were made, then it behooves us to respect it. So then comes the second element involved in getting along together, which is respect. You have to respect. So if you respect all life as equal, then of course there's certain rules that you must follow in order to carry out that respect. And now you are coming in contact with all of your family. Now your family, because you are no different than us. We are one family. First of all, we're the family of human beings. And there's a whole family of wolves, a nation of wolves. There's a nation of buffaloes. There's a nation of all of these variety of things. They all have their place, and they all have their purpose. And when one leaves, or one nation is removed from our circle, then there is an effect upon all of us, which we all feel. And so, the understanding that we were given the first time was, what is this interrelation? And how and why must we respect all of this life? We knew from the beginning, and we had it from teachings, that this is what we must do. Currently, we can get analytical, scientific ratification of those thoughts at this point. Say, yes, if you cut down all the trees, you're going to cut down the oxygen, and therefore you're going to suffer. You're going to change things. And how you die off, well, it could be through war, it could be through famine, it could be through your own stupidity of killing the things that's going to keep you alive. But if you're going to contaminate water, then you're going to kill people, because water is primary. You cannot exist without water. And all of these chemical dumps that are seeping into watersheds at this time are lethal. And they're finding more and more. And all of this chemical business is only maybe 60 years old, at best 70 years old. The development of these chemicals have been very recent. Development of fertilizer, development of all of this stuff has only been since the Second World War, really. Prior to that, people were farming the old way. After the Second World War, all of these chemical companies, which had made millions of dollars on the war, turned their efforts now to food. And they got into fertilizer, they got into chemicals. And as a result of that, you have dependency now on chemicals. And you have farmers who are very angry because it costs more or just as much to buy these chemicals as the profit they're making on the farm. So who's making all the money? Simple. So you really have to think about these things and become aware of it and understand it and find out how does it function. And water, which is being piped out from the ground all over. Kansas, you know, how many people have flown across the country? Now you've seen these circles, right? You look down, you see these circles, these are wells, and these are wells going down to permanent aquifers, which means once the water's gone, there's no more going back in there. And millions of gallons of water are being pumped up, are being circulated, and more cities are tapping into this water. And water is the issue. Let me tell you right now, water is what is going to kill you first. We've said it, we've always said it. So the principle of representation of government, that is where the United States got their principle. Representation of people in government comes from us. And you've heard it again and again, maybe not, I don't know, but they say, well, the United States government was patterned after the Iroquois. Well, they're talking about that. They're talking about how we sit in government, the three sides of the fire. On the one side, the elder brothers, who are the Mohawks and the Senecas, and on the other side, the younger brothers, who are the Oneidas, the Cayugas, and the Tuscaroras. And on the third side, the fire keepers, who are the Onondagas. Together, we compose the Haudenosaunee Six Nation. And so each side has a single spokesman representing that thought, and all ideas and all laws are passed with full agreement. There is no vote. We take no vote. We must agree totally, the three sides. And so, in your government of the United States, you have three sides. Your younger brothers is the Congress. Your elder brothers is the Senate. And the administration is the fire keepers. You see? It's so simple. But that's where Benjamin Franklin got it. John Adams, all those people. They studied with us. 1754, we went to Albany and told you how to run a government. And that's what made Benjamin Franklin so excited. He said, if these savages can do it, what about us? So, how does it work then? Obviously, what I'm telling you is that it's an integration. You're integrating the spirituality with your everyday life, with government. And when the United States came about, they did the thing that we said not to do. They separated the spirituality from the government. And they did that because they had so many churches, they couldn't agree which was going to be the spiritual center, so they said it's better just to separate it. And we said, you're going to have trouble. It'll come to you. And so, another interesting thing which I might add while we're talking about this is that Lewis Henry Morgan wrote a book on the Haudenosaunee. I think it's 1845 or 1854, something like that. And he did a great treatment. He was, I think, the first anthropologist. And studied us quite a bit. You know, our society. How come we didn't have rich, and how come we didn't have poor, and how come we didn't have institutions, how come we didn't have this and that? We wondered, because, and how come the society was so healthy, so strong, free. And that's a word that you have to come to understand, free. What is free? You see? And Karl Marx and Engels got a hold of this book, and they studied it quite a bit. It was a great interest to them. How did this classless society come about? A lot of their concepts are coming from that book. So what do you have? You have the two major powers in the world today facing each other, who have at least some of their roots in the Haudenosaunee. But both, this we emphasize, have left out spirituality, which we said was the central force. And we emphasize this to them, even today when we talk to them. I said, one of the reasons you're in trouble is because you don't understand and don't believe. At least if you're going to function the way we were and do. And we have all the problems that any community has, and when our council gets together, we have all the push and pull, but we have a lot of respect in there. And we also have the men who sit there, or I guess would be called volunteer, because we don't receive any compensation for any of our work. And I think if you were to take the leaders of this country and remove their compensation, you'd have a whole different set of leaders in there. Or you wouldn't have any. But when you have a council that sits of its own free will, and of its commitment and dedication, and also of its agreement to give, you have a very strong council. You have a council that is impossible to corrupt. You see? It's a positive thing, but where are you going to find these type of leaders, and how are you going to deal with it when, as you sit and you listen to each Congress raise their own pay? You know, each year you hear, well, I think we'll add on another 5,000 or so, or even more. And they do this without, right in front of you, without any shame. It's amazing to us. And so your leadership is very poor because of this, because of who you put in there, and because of how they're operating. So you're only going to get back what you put in. All right? So I'm kind of going around a lot of things, but what I want to say to you is that as each individual, you are autonomous, you are sovereign. Each one of you are a sovereignty unto yourself. And you demand all the respect that goes to a sovereignty. And that's how we look at one another. We respect the sovereignty of each individual. That sovereignty is what you call freedom. And that sovereignty does not release you to infringe on someone else's sovereignty. Of where is the voice of the woman? And we are concerned of the Haudenosaunee and Indian nations, I think in general, are very concerned about the lack of input of the female into government. We hold the female as a very sacred member of the society. She carries life. That's always been the role of the female. Carries life, continues life. And our word for little girl, what you would say a little girl, a female child, iksa, doesn't mean a little girl. It means a person with a great responsibility in front of her. That's literally what it translates to. And so, in the structure, in the second message that we were given, what we call the Great Law, positions were made for the involvement of the female in the government. And I think it's this part of it that may be something you'd like to hear. How did we approach it? How do we approach it? Because we don't get that voice in our society and our government. We don't hear the women say, we don't have anything to say, or we don't have a place to speak from. So they said, in order to operate, we're going to have 3 representatives of your family in a larger representation government. And so the 3 representatives were 1, the chief, 2, the sub-chief or his helper, the clan mother, who was to oversee the welfare of the clan. It was her duty, and she was given, to choose the 2 other representatives. So it was a clan mother that chose the chiefs, and still does. It's also the clan mother that removes the chiefs, still does. Great deal of power. Her voice is very strong. She cannot interfere with the governing voice that she puts in there. She cannot dictate to the chief once he is sitting in there. But she watches his conduct, and he can be removed. And so the women are heavily represented and have a strong voice. Of course, the strongest voice of all is choosing the representative of your people. Is that not? And that is her sole duty. She does that by herself. Now it has to be ratified by the clan. It has to be ratified by the other clan mothers. It has to be ratified by the chiefs of that nation. And finally has to be ratified by all the chiefs of the 6th nation before he is condoled and put into that position for life. But at any rate, she holds the power, the balancing power. So her choice is tempered then. Her choice is tempered by an individual who is concerned for the family, an individual who is compassionate, an individual who is fair. Those are her choices, because that's a woman's choice. You see? So now you have a conglomeration or composite of chiefs who have been chosen by women. So that's your first protection in your council. You have people who will represent the interests. Now it doesn't always work out, and if it doesn't, there's processes for removal. So our people don't feel as though they cannot speak. And when the chiefs are put in, they are told that you now belong to the people. You now have given your life to the people. And we expect the best out of you.